All right, I think we're live. Push 1 in the chat if you can hear me. All right, thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 785, Space and Technology. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. There's a doc in the description beneath the video for you to follow along with and reference. If you want to get on the panel, there's a link in the chat. Just make sure you update your Zoom client before joining. And we'll get started. Just give me a second. Let me pull up the docket and then we'll move through this really quickly. All right, let me share my screen. Let me know if you can see it. If you can see the shared screen in the chat. All right, cool. First item on the docket is from CGTN. Google bets big on Africa with mega undersea project. This should be interesting.
Struggling with could be a thing of the past, especially with the arrival of Google's Equiano sea cable. It's a 15,000-kilometer cable, runs all the way under the sea. It offers express connectivity from Lisbon in Portugal, runs all the way down the Atlantic to Cape Town in South Africa. And that makes it the fastest digital routes between the continents. Equiano also has landing stations at Rupert's Bay, St. Helena, Lomé in Togo, Nigeria's commercial city of Lagos, and in Namibia too. Here's Angela Coppola with the details.
The much-awaited Google Equiano sea cable has arrived in Cape Town. The cable stretches 15,000 kilometers from Europe down the west coast of Africa with landing stations in Togo, Nigeria, Namibia, and South Africa.
The Equiano cable is the biggest cable ever to connect the west coast of Africa, or in fact the entire sub-Saharan Africa, to the global internet. It's got a capacity of 144 terabits per second. To put that in context, the previous biggest cable was the West Africa cable system, which has got a 12.5 to 14 terabit per second capacities.
The initiative is part of Google's $1 billion commitment to expand Africa's digital ecosystem and bring more people online on the world's least connected continent.
Will sort of ignite Africa into the digital age and sort of increase and sort of help the continent to fight some of the sort of challenges that are faced, such as job sort of creation. We expect 180,000 or so jobs within the next 5 years to be created by this investment that we've made.
Equiano brings the promise of cheaper, faster, reliable internet with better services. It could also add $5.8 billion to South Africa's GDP alone.
So what we also expect it to do is to accelerate digital transformation and economic growth in the continent as well as in South Africa. but also to increase sort of the global ecosystem, internet global ecosystem, as then it will allow other sort of partners to connect into the cable.
Data infrastructure company Seacom, which runs its own cable on the east coast of Africa, is one of those partners.
This gives us the ability to work seamlessly online. So you're not constrained by what you could do previously. Whether you're setting up a business at home, an online business that allows you to trade anywhere in the world, you have the reliability from this cable and all the other cables that come on board. So it increases reliability on your business.
So you're going to see a lot of different services, additional services, and more advanced services that meet specific needs of specific sectors. So the financial services sector, the telecom sector, and the like will all find themselves having bespoke solutions that meet their needs, as opposed to having to accept this bulk supplied delivery from the global internet.
Equiano's arrival coincides with that of 24 Africa, backed by major investors such as China Mobile, MTN, Vodafone, and Meta Platforms, formerly known as Facebook. 24 Africa spans 45,000 kilometers with high-speed links to Europe and the Middle East. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
All right. So what we're seeing here is this, okay? This is the industrialization of the continent of Africa happening right now, okay? That cable is going to bring immense performance to broadband communication that's going to take place, including your 5G connectivity as well, because 5G doesn't just work in a vacuum. It has to have some kind of global connectivity as well. And so the 5G rollout, this big C cable rollout, as well as electrification, like the gentleman said in the excerpt, that it's going to bring at least 180,000 jobs to the continent. At least it's going to add $5 billion US dollars just to South Africa alone. We're not even talking about Ghana. We're not talking about Togo and Nigeria and the other West African countries. This is an amazing time to be involved in tech when it comes to being on the continent or being in the diaspora, traveling back and forth to the continent and setting up a tech-enabled business. And so I wanted to bring that up so that everybody can get an understanding as to where things are going right now in 2023. This should have happened maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but I think the pandemic slowed down a lot of things. But you add fintech, you add 5G, you add cloud computing, you're starting to see that Africa is starting to speed up in ways that we hadn't even anticipated a couple years ago, okay? They're going from 12 to 14 terabits up to 144 terabits. This is monumental. This is very monumental. So that being said, man, let me move on to the next item on the docket. Share my screen. All right, next item on the docket is from DW. Germany taps into Africa's IT sector to fill labor gap. We've been talking about this, right? German companies are training young Africans to become IT experts, also for the German market. The plan hopes to reduce the shortage of skilled workers in Germany and give Africans a perspective in their home countries. Let me zoom this in. Augustine Nomano was unemployed for months after completing his IT studies in Ghana's capital, Accra. After my studies, I looked for a job in the tech industry. Nomano told DW. But due to his lack of practical experience, he had no success until a friend introduced him to a company, Tech. Now, a year later, Normanyo is almost finished with his advanced training as a software engineer. Quote, at the moment, my goal is to work in the service center and further develop my skills. Tech offers graduate paid jobs that provide them with income. As a result, some of them can get a position in the German market without leaving Ghana. The tech company, headquartered in Cologne, Germany, brings skilled workers from its 2 locations in Ghana and Rwanda with local and international customers. As a result, the next generation of technology experts is being built up in Africa. And in the future, it will offer Germany a way out of the shortage of skilled workers in the IT sector. Okay. So now they're betting on Black. Oh, I think once you get a new opportunity at Tech, you can make it in any technology field in the world, said Bilal Bukhari, who was recruited as an engineering information technology student when he met Tech's talent scouts on campus. After graduation, he immediately joined the IT company and is enthusiastic about professionalism. Quote, they give a very good insight into the industry sector, so you really know what's going on, he told DW. These are commercial drones used for irrigation and pesticides in terms of the agri-tech sector. So when I was over there in Rwanda, this is some of the stuff that I saw when I was over there. According to economist Eckhard Bode of the Kiel Institute for the World Economy, this model should set a precedent. Quote, the African continent offers great potential to reduce the labor shortage, Bode told DW. Quote, be it by outsourcing work that cannot be done in Germany because of the lack of labor, as practiced by the company Tech, or through immigration of skilled workers from Africa. Bode said the need to be greater change in how German society perceives immigrants. Are we Germans really willing to accept immigration? Bode asked. He warned that the shortage of skilled workers or labor could become a brake on growth and prosperity in Germany in the future, stressing that Berlin needed to take more decisive countermeasures than in the past. Without greater immigration of workers, we will, in all probability, not be able to solve this brake on prosperity. With increasing digitalization, the tech sector is particularly affected. Many IT projects in German public administration do not function exceptionally well. Germany's companies currently lack 137,000 IT experts across all sectors, reports the Digital Industry Association, Bitkom. But the IT market offers a win-win situation for both sides through the possibility of being trained and working digitally from anywhere in the world. That's a good prospect for young Africans and German companies. Quote, in this way, the skilled labor base is strengthened globally to reduce harmful effects such as brain drain. Najim, a migration expert at the Bertelsmann Foundation, told DW, internationally, there are many pilot projects with different models. For example, in Eastern Europe, Asian and Latin America. But according to Azov, there is a need to look more closely at countries in sub-Saharan Africa, where the initial hurdles may be somewhat greater, but the potential for all sides is all the greater. Certain prejudices of investors and question of compatibility often stand in the way, the migration expert added. And so this is some of the stuff that African Americans have been going through domestically here in the United States, right? A lot of Black people get overlooked for jobs. And then if you look at the numbers, Black people make up less than like 5% or less than 10% of the tech sector, in America, despite the fact that in some of the 4 areas, Atlanta, New York City, Houston, Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, what you see are great numbers, right? Black people are very dominant in these areas, but they don't have the representation in the tech sector because of those same prejudices. And so these are some of the areas that we see domestically, but we're also seeing it on the continent as well. And the article is kind of pointing out that these prejudices are actually making, have also made it difficult, to recruit, okay? Africa has a demographic surplus of young people. Azaf is convinced that this opportunity must be seized and that there are promising approaches in North Africa and Tunisia and Morocco. However, many talented young people in South and East Africa work as software developers and programmers for German and European customers. In 2019, Anja founded the company Code of Africa in Hamburg to build flexible and well-trained young teams in East Africa. 10 full-time employees now work at the company's headquarters in Rwanda. Just mentioned that earlier. I was there a couple of years ago. Plus 40 additional IT staff are available for services from the networks in Kenya, Uganda, and Democratic Republic of Congo. Our focus is that the young people do not immigrate, but can build a sustainable life for themselves in East Africa and secure a working income. Shosa So DW. Salami Suleiman, a trainer at Amali Tech, is convinced that his trainees can succeed. Quote, we know that the employees with whom we started the service center and who now work for us in developing, taking on leadership positions, Suleiman said. Amali Tech offers structure and goes on a learning journey with beginners. So-called soft skills also play an essential role, Suleiman said, adding that communication, adaptability, flexibility, and the ability to work in a team are vital too. In some ways, these skills have become almost more important than technical skills. In his opinion, the education system has so far shortchanged that. IT specialist Bilal and Augustine plan to stay in Ghana for now. Abukari hopes to work on a client project in the future. If I stay at Amali Tech, I can follow this path, and in 10 years, I could then look at other markets, for example, in Europe. So this is what I have been saying before, that, all of these tech jobs, the certifications, the boot camps and stuff like that, we have been talking about this for a while, right? And some people have pushed back and said, oh man, you shouldn't focus on the entry-level stuff. Actually, the article tells you that the entry-level stuff is the focus, okay? The entry-level stuff is the focus. And it's not so much the tech skills, but it's the people skills, the social skills and things like that. We've talked about this a number of times on the tech talks that we had over the last couple of years, even recently. There have been some people that pushed back and said, you're giving out false information, but in reality, this article corroborates everything that I've been saying, the last couple of years and even recently. So that being said, when you combine that new CCOM cable that's coming down from Google to the continent, the west coast of Africa, and then you combine German companies, European companies tapping into the African market, you're going to see an explosion of the middle class as these new opportunities start to creep up from the tech sector. And so there's going to be a demand for more middle class and luxury items such as iPhones and iPads and things like that. More Samsungs and less Nokias, so to speak. And so you're going to start to see a lot more tech, more demand for high performance tech come over there to the continent instead of some of the low stuff that they have right now. All right, let me move on to the next item. All right. Next item on the docket is from Wired. What's going on here? A Peter Thiel-backed startup city wants to be Africa's Delaware. Nigeria's Atana partnered with Binance and the Charter Cities Institute to build a physical tech hub near Lagos, but the plan has sparked controversy. See if I can zoom in on this a little bit. All right. I'm going to butcher a couple of names here, so I'm not even going to try to pronounce them. So bear with me on this. Along the half-finished asphalt of the Abuja Lekki Epe expressway out of Lagos, flanked by marshland and unmarked farms and rows of fledgling developments, there is an invisible point after which some of Nigeria's laws suddenly no longer apply. In 2009, the Lagos state government declared a 150 square kilometer patch of land along the Gulf of Guinea coast, the Lekki Free Zone, offering tax-free holidays and other perks for companies who set up there. Quote, the moment you are inside the zone, you are outside of the Nigerian state, says Omalade Adumbi, professor of Afro-American and African Studies at the University of Michigan and author of Enclaves of Exception, Special Economic Zones and Extractive Practices in Nigeria. The rationale for the zone was simple: entice international businesses to establish a thriving industrial hub and watch the newly created capital flow outward to the rest of the economy. So far, the projects in the free zone have been industrial, with an oil refinery, garment factories, and other manufacturing facilities looming over the scumland. Let me add this person in here. Over the scrubland. But a new project has its ambitions first and foremost in the cloud, a virtual startup city that will transform into a physical one when it lays its first bricks later this year. Spearheaded by one of Nigeria's most successful tech entrepreneurs, Abuyeji, and real estate entrepreneur Lukman Adu, Itana is an inspiring tech hub that promises to host Nigeria's internet workers and help nurture a new generation of tech unicorns, taking advantage of the Lekki Free Zone pre-existing tax breaks to appeal to entrepreneurs. The founders envisioned the completed city as somewhere between the glittering spires of Dubai and Delaware, the small US state that is the registered home of more than 1.5 million companies from all over the world. The project's investors include stalwarts of controversial movement to build privately owned city-states around the world, including Pronomos Capital, a venture fund backed by libertarian billionaire Peter Thiel. It's also working with the Charter Cities Institute, a nonprofit that advocates for a quasi-independent pro-business zones to be established in developing countries. It already has its first high-profile partner in Binance, the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, which has agreed to establish a blockchain-based financial ecosystem in the city, in a country that has heavily regulated crypto trading. Itana has ambitions to become Africa's Silicon Valley, but historically, private city projects in special economic zones on the continent have struggled to become the beacons of prosperity they were initially pitched as. Critiques of such endeavors say they don't contribute to society at large, but simply create havens for wealthy and risk exacerbating the economic inequality that has long driven the conflict in Nigeria. The ideology underpinning low-tax pro-business enclaves that exist on the periphery of the nation state is antithetical to the progress of Africa, Adumbi says. This is true, okay? I'm not gonna read all of this if we don't have enough time, but the thing here is this is true, that one of the biggest challenges on the continent for building a tech city is the fact that you don't have enough electrification, okay? You don't have enough electrification. And so you need at least 100 megawatts to start off with, and you don't really have that all over the continent. Electrification is really sparse. And so to get more investors in there, you got to first electrify most of these major hubs. And unfortunately, there's a lot of difficulty getting finance for electrification, primarily because what are you electrifying, right? You can't just electrify a empty parcel or acres of land that don't have anything on it. And so there's a lot of challenges here that I see on the continent that also impacts Black people in the United States. And let me go further with this, right? Explain this in more detail. One of the problems that we don't have tech cities, or I shouldn't say tech cities, but Silicon Valleys in predominantly Black areas is because we don't have enough investment. We don't have enough investment primarily because, hold on a second. All right, I'm back. Sorry for the delay, but as I was saying, I think some of the comparisons that we can make is that the lack of investment in Black cities and Black neighborhoods is due to the fact that there's no political will to create a Silicon Valley in predominantly Black neighborhoods and Black cities. You can compare that to what's going on in Africa. Like the article is saying that a lot of the time that we have that they're proposing like this new Wakanda, or they're trying to build this new Silicon Valley, they're always trying to do something, but on the continent, the lack of electrification becomes a problem. And then in the United States, the lack of political will is also a part of that issue is similar, right? It's in the same vein that there's a, inherent risk. People are inherently risk averse to investing in predominantly Black cities and neighborhoods. And then you also compound that in Africa, where there's a lack of, people are very risk averse in investing in the continent as well. And I think that government has to be the front runner and stakeholder in all of this, okay? This is some of the challenges that they go through. So I'm not gonna read this whole article, but I just wanted to highlight this because I thought that it was pretty interesting that this sort of conversation is happening, but they're going through some of the similar challenges that we have in the United States. What's up, Complex Design? All right, maybe you can't hear me. All right, let me go into the next item on the docket. This will be the last one. Old article, but I wanted to make sure that we covered this because it's relevant to everything that we were talking about on this channel over the last few years, as well as what's actually happening right now. This is from US News. The African-American men, the other STEM minority. African-American men are one of the only minority groups not making progress in STEM. All right. It's not, what is all this, man? It's not often that you hear calls for more men to participate in science, technology, engineering, and math fields. Advocates consistently beat the drum to find ways to engage more female and minority students in STEM fields, which are still largely dominated by men. But within that group is perhaps one of the most underrepresented demographics, African-American men. Among U.S. citizens and permanent residents, the number of Black men who earn science and engineering doctorates grew by more than 25% in 10 years, according to data from the National Science Foundation. While that appears to be a large growth, the absolute numbers barely budge between 2003 and 2013, inching up from just 631 . Hey, I'm sorry about that. Just had a phone call. And the representation has stayed essentially flat between 4.5% and 4.8% of all science engineering doctorates. The number of science and engineering bachelor's degrees awarded to Black men increased 45% from 12,484 in 2002 to 18,102 in 2012. But similarly, Black men as a proportion of all science and engineering bachelor degree recipients has remained essentially unchanged at 6.1% in 2002 and 6.2% in 2012. Like women and other minority groups, African-American men are also underrepresented in the workforce. Census data show that in 2010, African-American men made up 6.2% of the population between 18 and 64 years old. But in the same year, the National Science Foundation reported that Black men represented just 3% of scientists and engineers working in those fields. Quote, this particular issue is one of the nation's grand challenges, said Gary May, Dean of Georgia Institute of Technologies, College and Engineering, during a roundtable discussion with reporters this week. This is in 2015, keep that in mind. We have many examples of various programmatic interventions to ensure success. We have 1,000 points of light, but we don't have a constellation. All we really need is something that connects. These 1,000 points of light to lead us to a proper solution. A group of African-American male STEM professionals, college and graduate students, professors, higher education administrators, and industry leaders gathered in the District of Columbia this week to speak with congressional staffers and representatives about the unique challenges young Black men face. Many of the roadblocks that prevent young African-American men from pursuing careers in STEM fields sound familiar. A lack of resources, role models, and reliability. The solutions to mirror those used to entice more women to work towards STEM careers. Start teaching and engaging students sooner and work to dispel the curse of self-doubt. But the problems are complicated and magnified for Black male students because of the systemic problems of perception and low expectations. Quote, the lack of African-American men in STEM is a byproduct of a failing system for African-Americans in the overall school system, said Carl Reed, executive director of the National Society of Black Engineers, during a roundtable discussion with reporters. Quote, if you're trying to survive in the educational process and you don't have access to the rigorous courses, it really doesn't bode well that you'll be on the pathway to a STEM degree. John Sylvanus Wilson, president of Morehouse College, a historically Black higher education institution in Atlanta, said the outcomes are predictable based on the student achievement data. African-American males, he said, have smaller vocabularies upon entering kindergarten, are more likely to be behind in reading and numeracy by fourth grade, and are at higher risk of being suspended. And of the roughly 160,000 African-American male students who graduate high school each year, fewer than half even apply for a four-year school, he said. Quote, the potential pool of STEM African-American males has shrunk already. So it's earlier in the pipeline when we're going to have to find solutions to this, Wilson said. They get off to a bad start. You got brokenness at the start, broken families, broken values, broken potential, and they go to broken schools, most of them. It's no surprise you get broken hope, broken ambition, and broken outcomes. Darrell Pines, dean of the School of Engineering at the University of Maryland College Park, said the problems run deeper than the underrepresentation of Black men in STEM. The United States, he said, goes through cycles that lead to feelings of frustration bubbling over, as they have in Baltimore in the last several weeks. Quote, we can use the STEM angle as a way to address it and to move our agenda along. That is to get more Black males involved in STEM, Pine said. But we seem as a country to not really solve the problem originally. The deeper problems, he said, are a sense of hopelessness among certain communities and a feeling of not being treated equitably in the educational system and the legal system. Quote, they are crying out for help, and it's not just West Baltimore. It's all the communities that are out there that have this problem, Pine said. This is an opportunity to leverage the interest in STEM because it is going to lead to great opportunities for the country, for our country, for economic development, and Black males cannot be left behind this time. This is an older article, but it really highlights some of the stuff that we've been talking about on here that we've been trying to highlight for quite some time. That one, there's been this notion that nobody's trying to do anything for Black men, right? There's this idea that, oh, everybody's sitting on the sideline, no one's trying to do anything. Well, looking at this picture right here, you have a whole lot of subject matter experts on this trying to figure this out. This was back in 2015. So the idea, the notion that no one's trying to do anything, this has kind of been debunked just by this article alone. The other thing that I see is that this problem has to be solved a lot earlier than post-secondary education or getting into college. I think one of the biggest challenges is that we make higher education less accessible to folk. And I think that we don't have a proper ecosystem. And we talked about ecosystems in the past, that you need an ecosystem to create a particular sector or an industrialize an area in order for things to be viable. Black men working is good for the economy, good for America. Okay, lowest crime rates also across the board. We know this. But there has to be a willingness to spend and invest into these areas. And so how you solve this is like the person from NSBE is also finding out, National Society of Black Engineers, you got to start at the K through 12 level. Okay, before they even start walking, there has to be an investment there. And I think the other half is infrastructure, social infrastructure, human infrastructure. All these things have to be invested into. Libraries. I think there should be some feasibility research into STEM playgrounds, not just places where people play basketball and football and stuff like that, because that's, a lot of your budget gets tied up into these areas. I think if you do the research on maker spaces, maker labs and stuff like that, the amount of money that you need to invest into that is a fraction of what you would spend on a football field or a football stadium in some of these areas. Soccer fields too. I understand the purpose of it, but I think you're missing out on the other half of industrialization. Soccer fields don't really industrialize communities. Football fields or basketball courts neither do the same. So there are some significant gaps that need to be fulfilled, and you need a little bit more research to actually go into this. But I'm glad that this article from 2015 is still highlighting that some of the challenges that we're seeing today is primarily because there's a lack of investment in these areas. And so the way you fix a lot of these things is you got to create an ecosystem. And that means that you have to have elected officials on board. You have to have the private sector on board. You have to have the government on board. You have to have state, city, and federal have to be on board. This is not that expensive. I think that you can do a lot of this with less than $100 billion. I think you can do it with less than $10 billion. The amount of money that they spend on law enforcement, they spend close to $150 billion on law enforcement a year. They spend more on law enforcement than they spend on the CDC and what they spend on the National Institute of Health combined. But no one takes that into consideration. And so I'm saying that this has to be, everybody has to, be involved in this. You can't just have one or two people. You can't put it all on Cory Booker. You can't put it all on Raphael Warnock. You can't put it all on Kamala Harris. You can't just put it on the CBC. Everybody has to be involved and have to be at the table. Like these gentlemen that you see in the picture are all at the table, okay? Everybody's at the table. Everybody has to be at the table. And I think that needs to be understood. In the manosphere, this is not really understood. Everybody thinks they can fight from StreamYards and that they can make progress from there. That's not the way how business works. Okay, you can't cultivate a society through StreamYards. It doesn't work that way. You have to have the necessary subject matter experts at the table. You have to have stakeholders at the table. You have to have proper documentation and governance happening at the table. All of these things have to happen in order for anything tangible to come out of it, okay? Complex Design, do you have anything you want to add to this?
No, Mike, how you doing, man? I'm coming in on the tail end. I just came back from running an errand, so I'm gonna catch the next article.
No, that's it, man. We're all kind of all set.
Shit. Okay.
So yeah. So what I'll do is I'll put the link in the chat again.
Okay, well, Mike, hey, catch me up to speed on that last article right there. Those gentlemen that were sitting at that table there. Just in brief, because I did hear
that you put this stuff.
Okay, because I did hear you say that was from 2015. So I'm curious to know what specifically that was about. Because that was right around the onset when we started coalescing collectively, right, in this space here on YouTube. Right around that time, a little bit after, maybe. So curious to know what this was about.
Well, the data that they're extrapolating is that Black men have not really moved the needle when it comes to bachelor's degrees, undergrad degrees in STEM, and they're trying to figure out a way to increase the numbers. This is in 2015 they were having this conversation.
Yeah, that's why I was curious.
Right, the people that you see at the table are trying to bring attention and bring awareness to the government, state and federal government, as this is a major issue. Now, we have talked about Black men getting into STEM specifically, that Black men are that other minority, and that's what they're highlighting, right? And so I had this article a while back, but I don't know why we didn't cover it in the past, but I'm just highlighting it now as a as a way to kind of reflect on some of the stuff that we've talked about before is still happening today, right, as to why Black men aren't making this sort of traction. But in the manosphere, there's this notion that no one's doing anything. But in reality, what you see on the screen is there are Black men out there who give a damn, who are actually having this conversation, right? And so I do think that that myth needs to be dispelled, that no one's doing anything. There are people doing stuff and really trying to investigate this as to how you get, how do you become more inclusive of Black men in STEM. I think there's a variety of ways of going about this, but I'm bringing this up because I think that there are ways of going about this, like I was saying earlier, where you had all the investments in football fields and basketball courts and soccer fields and things like that. I think that's all necessary in some areas, but I also think that we invest too much money into football fields and basketball courts. You could spend $1 million on a basketball court or football field without even blinking. And in most U.S. cities, you have dozens of basketball courts, dozens of football fields, dozens of soccer fields being propped up in these neighborhoods. And it kind of somewhat gentrifies the neighborhood, but it also sucks a lot of the resources, the capital that should be invested into Black men. So
I was going to say, man, like how much does it really cost to build a basketball court, bro? I've had neighbors do it. They didn't spend, it wasn't something to the tune of $1 million, right? To put it in their backyard or something, right? It really wasn't.
That's different. Well, it's different when you're talking about personal.
No, I know, but what I'm speaking to is the value, dude. It's a fucking basketball court at the end of the day, right? How much does something like that?
Government spends big money.
I know, but I'm saying,
yeah,
dude, like
government, yeah.
Before a basketball court, I'm saying, I'm making your argument, right? Couldn't that money be better spent elsewhere?
Mike is talking about defunding sports. My bad. Mike, defund sports.
Yeah.
How's my thing sounding?
Wait, he said, how's your mic sounding?
Well, we can hear you, Chaos. Please, yeah. We can hear you, Chaos. Okay. Please mute up, though.
Okay, that was him. Okay.
Go ahead.
No, was that Professor Black?
Go ahead, Complex, please finish.
No,
yes.
That's all. That was the point that I was making. That was it. It was just sort of like I was really to reiterate your point, like where those monies could go to be something more productive. Because I'm like, well, like for the money that you spend on a basketball, I was like, I have had neighbors build a basketball court for a fraction. So for the money that's spent, I get it. It's government money. It's bloat. It's all these other things, right? But if you're gonna do that, then why not do it at least to where there's something that you can get back from it? A court is a court. You know what I'm saying? Weather gets cold, ain't nobody gonna really be out there balling like that, right? But see, indoor maker labs and stuff like that, that's still of use through all seasons. Yeah. So I'm questioning the ROI, right, from a public financing infrastructure financing standpoint. That's what I'm questioning.
Well, I think the issue here is that it keeps a lot of white men working when it comes to building parks and recreation. A lot of your sidewalk development that's being had now across the country, where you have to have accessible crosswalks and a complex. There's a lot of noise coming from you.
Sorry, hold on.
A lot of your sidewalks and handicap accessible infrastructure keeps a lot of white men employed. And so there's a desire to create these sort of, faux necessities of infrastructure to keep white men working. I mean, it's not Black men that are out there, laying down asphalt and things like that and building infrastructure like that within civil society not at that level. And so these are the sort of challenges that happen. Well, let's go to Professor of Black Ops.
What's up, Mike, man? Great info. Just do you think certs are helping, since they were just more talking about 4-year and 2-year degrees? You think our numbers are a little higher if you add in certifications, because they seem to be super hot, and I think you get a little more RIO on that when you first start. So you think we got a little higher numbers if you put the cert guys in there for certifications, CNA, Security Plus, A Plus, that whole gambit. What's your thoughts on that?
I think they serve a purpose, but I also think that you have to have some formal training too, right? And that's where the boot camps come in though, right? But if you're going to train people for X amount of time, you may want them to have at least an associate's degree because the time, for us, you know this, Prof, in the workplace, it could take 6 to 8 weeks just to train somebody on institutional knowledge. We're not even talking about the systems. Institutional knowledge takes a lot of time to build or to train someone on. And then you start talking about all the other systems, whether you're talking about Windows servers, Linux servers, et cetera. There's all sorts of ways that these systems tie in with the institution. And then you're talking about another 6 weeks minimum just to train those people up on that. So you're talking about 12 weeks of this training in the corporate sector for a new hire.
Facts.
That becomes a problem, right? And so to answer your question, I think that certifications play a significant role when it comes to licensing. For example, when we used to work with Verizon on pen testing and other sort of Verizon services, security services, they want people to have a Security Plus before they even have a conversation with them, or they want people to be Network Plus, or even Dell, HP, they want you to be A+ before you can even have a conversation. They don't want you touching their stuff without having these certifications. So to your point, certifications do play a role, but I also think that post-secondary education, vocational training play a significant role too, because you're kind of vetting them in these sort of incubators, and then you're also putting them through a rigorous process that they need to go through in order to understand what they're going to be getting into after they leave.
I agree with you. Long story short is I worked at DOD. It took me 3 months to figure out what people were talking about. Because, Fed, they just talking abbreviations, EIT, SAT. So, like you said, that institutional knowledge takes a while to get up, man. I'll throw it back to you and let the other people on the panel chime in.
I think Chaos said he had a question.
Yes, I have a question. And let me say this. They always say this notion that the black man is costing this country money. But no one asks, what is their money invested in towards black people, especially black men? Should be the biggest question, especially talking about billions, because we're now in a more highly advanced society, and it's only going to get advanced as time progresses. And what you read so far, Mike, that they're already gearing towards other locations and already got people that's already suited, booted, and probably educated enough to do some of these things. And either they're not informing a lot of us, or we're not in the right areas to find this information that there's opportunities properly. And instead of saying, woe is me. Is that what I'm getting at, Mike?
Well, when you say what information specifically are you referring to?
Like, let's say most people that don't know anything how to get into the tech field, or just get their feet wet, right? I know Professor Black, he always emphasized the certifications, and he shows the and teach certain class like AWS and some other things. But really, when my thing is like, it's there, but there's no really actual point direction, or just for those that's interested to know, what they're really getting into, or many questions. You get me? But I don't want it to really hear the notion that like these black men are like by default completely lazy.
No, we know that.
I don't think the article. I don't.
No. This is not
stipulated that.
No. The article's not focused. I'm focused on just in general. You get me? Because the article is.
I don't hear anybody saying that black men are lazy.
Not lazy, but this is the notion that's being pushed. This propaganda, Mike. We know the article's saying different.
I don't hear that. No. I'm saying I don't hear that at all. I don't hear that at all about anybody saying that black men are lazy. I don't hear that.
I think the criticism,
not when it comes to STEM.
It's a criticism. Might be. I mean, like complex.
Well, no. The criticism. The criticism is that there's a lack of interest when there's simultaneously a call to action.
Yeah,
that's what Mike's getting at. It's not what we're saying that there's a, or it's not that black men are lazy. That's not it, right? Because cats, we're known for that hustle and grind culture, so to speak, right? So when it matters most, right, we'll do it, and that just really kind of depends on who we're talking about here. But what we're talking about more so is from an infrastructure standpoint, from a globalization standpoint, this is where industry is headed. It's headed into the tech and the STEM fields. See, so if what there is a general overall acknowledgement that this is an important place for us to be in, then it begs the question, right? Begs the question.
And Mike, you said that they're investing more in women to get in these fields. Am I right? Earlier in this broadcast?
No. No,
Okay.
no.
All right. Move on with the next article.
Ernest Terry, what's going on, bro?
Do we have one?
What's going on, guys? Mike, can you hear me?
Good,
Yeah,
bro.
there we go. Hey,
Yeah.
what's
Yes,
going
sir.
on, man?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm completely on board with the idea of the K through 12, maybe even the K through 6, because I mean, I guess a 10-year-old can't get a pen test certification. So if we're starting these things from an embryo point, then the government has to be involved. And when I say government, I mean federal, state, but especially local, especially school board, to change the curriculum in the local school area. Now, if you're narrowing that down to the black male, just an FYI, I think the last time I mentioned on the broadcast here that I've already got 3 of my nephews, a pair, twins, and one other nephew from 2 brothers of mine. I already got them set up to go into STEM camp for the summer, and they all are under 13 years old. Now we know that in the Black community that 70+% of these boys are in single female parent homes. So when I was thinking of this idea to get my nephews involved, I had to a degree, go around the females and get to the male side in my family they were close to, and have the male side influence them, because there is a single female, to a degree, because I come from a single female home. There is a single female, not a glass ceiling, but probably a brick wall, because of lack of not knowing, what they got as far as potential with these young Black boys. So we're going to have to address that single Black female brick wall when it comes to these boys, getting them into these curriculum in the K through 12 level. It can be done, but it's going to take some maneuvering to get through this single female Black wall.
Yeah.
In
the 1980s, you had 2 prominent Black men in the conscious and pro-Black movement. One by the name of Maurice Bishop of Grenada, and then you had Thomas Sankara in what we now know as Burkina Faso. Okay, Upper Vala was the previous name of the country. He renamed the country. And these 2 Black men under the age of 40 years old led their countries in prominence in the 1980s, and they were both killed. CIA took both of them out. The fear was what these brothers were doing. Okay, they increased the literacy rates among Black people in their countries from 1% to 90% in 4 years. Impeccable means of transformation, social transformation that most Black people have never seen before. And so I think when we say that we have to go back down to K through 12, I don't disagree. I just think that the pushback is, it's going to take 50 years to do it. And I don't see that being the case. I think that you can do things like this in a very short amount of time, because it's been proven before in the 1980s that this was very viable. I think in Jamaica, actually in Barbados, the literacy rate is something like 98%. It's one of the most highly educated demographics within the Western Hemisphere right now, even more so than what people call ADOS. And so when we have these conversations, I think that we kind of overthink and make it more complex than what it needs to be, rather than to just have more Black educators educating Black children at the K through 12 level. I think that plays a significant role. But let me read this article that Shonda put in the chat so gracefully with her research. This is from the pewresearch.org. Black Americans' views of education and professional opportunities in science, technology, engineering, and math. I'm only going to read some of this. This is a pretty long article. We'll probably come back to it next week. More than 40 years ago, Shirley Malcolm and her colleagues at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, AAAS, called the wide attention challenges for Black Americans, especially for Black women working in science, with groundbreaking conference and report discussing minority women scientists' experiences and recommendations for increasing representation in science. The new survey calls attention to some of the potential encouragements and discouragements that Black adults see in report having experienced firsthand. When it comes to perceptions of Black achievement in education and STEM, the findings also point to Black adults' beliefs about the factors that would do the most to increase representation in STEM fields. Center analysis of government data shows that Black Americans continue to be underrepresented in STEM jobs. There has been little progress in the share of Black graduates from collegiate or higher level STEM training programs over the past decade. Ask what would help. Complex mic is making a lot of noise. Ask what would help attract young Black people to pursue STEM degrees. A majority of Black Americans think it would help a lot if people saw more examples of higher achievers in these areas who were Black. About 3/4 of those with a college degree or more, education think this would help a lot. Underscoring issues of representation, relatively few Black adults view STEM professional groups as very welcoming toward Black people in their ranks. While Black adults express some doubt about the openness of multiple professions to Black people, ratings for scientists and engineers are among the lowest across the non-professional groups in the survey. Those for medical doctors fare only slightly better. Science and engineering also rank low on the list of areas where Black adults see prominent examples of Black achievement. Compared with other professional groups such as clergy and military officers, fewer say that Black people have reached the highest levels of success among scientists and engineers. To measure perceptions of Black achievement, the Center survey asked respondents if they thought Black people had reached the highest level of success in each of the 9 professional groups. At the top of these ratings were professional athletes and musicians. Scientists and engineers were ranked lowest. Overall, 84% of Black adults say Black people have achieved the highest levels of success among professional athletes, and 80% say this about Black professional musicians. Majorities of Black adults say Black people have reached the highest levels of success in law, 68%, and religious leaders, 58%. Medical doctors are rated in the middle of these 9 professional groups, with 55% of Black adults saying that Black people have reached the highest level of success in medicine. In contrast, scientists and engineers are rated lowest among the set, 36%. Say Black people have reached the highest level of success in science, and 43% say this about engineers. Majority say this is not the case. Views of Black achievement in these STEM professions are similar among older and younger Black adults. Across levels of educational attainment, those with a high school diploma or less are somewhat more likely to say Black people have reached the highest level of success in science and engineering than Black adults with more education. Black men are more likely than Black women to say Black scientists have reached the highest levels of success, 44% versus 31%. However, there are no gender differences in view of engineers. Relative lack of visible examples of Black achievement in science and the allied fields of technology, engineering, and math is one factor that could deter Black people from deciding to pursue STEM education and careers. I think this is actually a really good article, and I'm glad Shonda dropped this in here because I'm not going to read the whole thing right now because it's really in depth and we don't have enough time for that. But I think that DEI programs were supposed to promote, and I'm saying in the workplace, were supposed to promote, have more engagement with Black people and have and be more inclusive of their representation. But it really has not worked in the last few years, especially after George Floyd. I know some companies made some, tried to make some traction, but a lot of them have not really made significant gains that would be necessary to aid into what this Pew Research is actually trying to point out, that the lack of representation makes it difficult for the perception to change. And so I know quite a few people have got out of the STEM industry, and more specifically IT, because of the lack of growth. They can do better, maybe open up a restaurant and things like that, kind of doing things that's kind of outside of the means of IT. And so I think corporate America plays a significant role in their lack of representation of promoting Black people up to more senior roles and more visible areas where they can demonstrate their expertise and get more accolades around this. Unfortunately, that does not translate into the social dynamics here as well, because what you have are people who look at STEM, Black people in STEM, as corny and lame, and even somewhat bourgeois, for that matter. It doesn't allow Black people to be wholesome. And I think what Black Panther has done, it has created Afrofuturistic ambitions around Black people in tech, right? Shuri, T'Challa, the Wakanda as a whole. It kind of brought forth a new vision as to where Black people can actually be in regards to tech and from an actual Afrofuturistic standpoint. And so I do think that there is some nuance here that should be acknowledged, but I do also think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done with promoting Black people in tech, and I don't think that Hidden Figures did that great of a job either. Let's go to Nagone 11. What's going on, bro?
Oh yeah, that's pretty good, Mike. I was just sitting there. I was reading over an article here real quick. I just wanted to finish doing that, but you definitely right on the money on a lot of points that you're hitting here, and I'm just kind of following along right now. But continue on.
No, that's it, man. I'm not going to read the whole thing today because we don't have enough time to go through it. But I just wanted to put it out there because I think that Shonda, the timing of the article was, or the research is actually pretty much on point, because it coincides with what we looked at here with African-American men and the other STEM minority. And how do you increase these numbers? Because it's not a matter, because we covered this last week, but it's not a matter of guys just performing poorly. I mean, that's just not necessarily the case, because that wasn't the case at Virginia Tech. You had people who came in performing great, and then they just kind of flamed out. And so it's a very complex issue. And I know, Prof, I know you've done adjunct work at community colleges. I know Nagone has volunteered at the Harlem Children's Zone. I don't know. I think media plays a significant role in this, right?
It does.
We'll put Nipsey Hussle. Oh, Nipsey Hussle, he invested in crypto. But what about the other guys who are not in the music industry who did invest in crypto, who actually understand, fintech and cryptocurrencies too? Like, we don't talk about them. We only want to promote, Nipsey Hussle and who else?
There's a reason for that,
trapper.
Mike.
Like, you have to. Let me finish my point, Chaos. They're constantly promoting other people who are not actually in tech as being tech, commentators. But when it comes to the people who are actually in tech, they don't get promotion at all, man. And I think when it comes to white people, you'll see somebody like what's this? The guy from FTX, the three name guy. I forget his name.
SBF.
Yeah. like even though he ripped people off with his organization, his face is promoted out there as if he's a rock star. Same thing with white women when it comes to fintech as well, like Kathy Woods, I think that's her name. Her face is everywhere, even though she has very little to do with the fintech industry in terms of shaping and moving it. She's promoted as if she is. And we saw that recently with this case in what's the woman who Elizabeth Holmes, right? This woman who had this fake startup, with Theranos. She's promoted as the darling of Silicon Valley, and her startup was a ripoff, right? It was fugazi, and so the lack of promotion is also a media phenomenon. I think it's a way to kind of marginalize Black folk from any sort of representation at all. Like Corey, the CEO of Rapid7, is a Black man, but nobody actually knows that. And that's maybe what they want. They don't want everybody to know that they have a Black CEO running one of the #1 cybersecurity companies out here.
You know,
ahead,
Mike. You got to go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Complex. Go ahead.
I was just going to say to that point. Here's the thing, right? If you know that brother is the CEO of that company, that means that it's known elsewhere. Really, what it speaks to is that these kind of prominent positions, they literally just aren't sexy. When we're talking about the Black community and Black society, they just aren't. That speaks to the point being made about if and rest in peace to him, Nipsey Hussle was involved in something tech-centric or like that, right? Then everybody's gonna rush to it. Or we could take Jay-Z, right? Tidal, for example, right? Streaming service, that the digital platform, right? All of a sudden, he's never mind that Tidal existed before he just became basically like a managing member. He didn't found it from the ground up. That's not what happened, right? So it's what it is that we look at, and I say we colloquially, people who are athletes and entertainers to then also be the titans of industry in other venues where they literally have no certifications, no formal education, no training, no nothing. And it's really a sight to be seen, because I literally can't think of any other group that does that. Especially when you just look at it from the feasibility side of things. Like, why would you prop up somebody that literally has no formal training in that venue and then say, yes, that person needs to do something there? It's always a Jay-Z and Puffy and these guys need to get together and do fill in the blank. And it's like, dude, they're rappers.
Thanks.
Yeah, because you don't see that in other cultures. And I'm not knocking, Nipsey Hussle. I'm not a fan of his catalog, but I think that no, I'm just making it clear to people who are listening to the playback. I think that does play a significant role. I put Corey Thomas on the screen here because he's the CEO of Rapid7, one of the leading cybersecurity companies out here. Met him a couple of times. He's actually a pretty relatable guy. He's on a couple of boards as well. And so, but that does not translate. And I think that's what the article from Pew Research that Shonda dropped in the chat, that in the US News article are highlighting that these are significant issues. We're not promoting these guys as rock stars. We don't really see Robert F. Smith as a STEM guy, right? We don't really see him as that. We see him as a venture capitalist, but we don't see him as a tech person first, because that's really where he came from. It's a very complicated issue. I don't know if this is the same at every micro center in the country, but I know at my micro center here in Boston, if you look in the rafters of the store, they have all of the prominent faces of innovators who help make the PC industry what it is. You got Metcalf from 3Com. You have Michael Dell is up there who created, you know, Dell Computers. You have all of these prominent figures up there. There are no Black people up there.
Like literally none.
And so even, yeah, but Black people played a significant role in the development of PC computing in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But we don't really
even
see that, right? It's not, yeah.
Even Mr.
There's a lot of feedback coming from Chaos Reign.
Yeah, even Mr. Denton, I forgot his name, the guy that helped deal with the chip and something about with Dell, or not Dell, was it, or IBM, something like that. But yeah, we do play a role, but like I said, I think there was a shift when they started to use the celebrities, I think during the 70s, I think, or 80s, one of them years, to really push as the forefront of so-called Black progress. And a lot of people follow through with it. And that's a shame and problematic, because now you feel when young people come up, they don't aspire to be like these people that done something that's really tangible to society. They want to aspire to be, you know, what they see on television. That's the dangers of letting your term being taught by the media and put in front of what is the reality. Personally, but that's just me.
Well, I would say to that, Chaos, you know, you have your Marcus Brownlee types, right? Where there's a lot of young white men who aspire to be a lot like him, right? And how do they encounter him?
But Marcus Brownlee is a very specific type of character, though, right? Because he doesn't tread the line. No, I'm saying he doesn't tread the. He doesn't walk that line of, you know, of Blackness, right? Like he's only Black in face and name only to them. Like once he started talking about George Floyd and being, being stopped and stuff like that. Yeah, there's a lot of pushback he got from that, right?
Yeah.
And so,
real shit.
I think people are comfortable with, I think people are comfortable with Marcus Brownlee in the position that he's in, as long as he doesn't, start talking about the Black experience,
right.
And so that's the sort of benign racism that we're talking about here. That this, you can be seen but not heard, and in other ways they also would like you just not to be seen at all.
That's dangerous. That's dangerous, Mike V. That's very dangerous.
Well, it's dangerous. It's dangerous, but see, at the same time, it's sort of like you. At the end of the day, you do have to make a stance for yourself out here in the world at some point, right? And so that's what I'm saying. Point taken, Mike. But see, he made that stance nonetheless, didn't he? He did it anyway. Right.
He did. And he did.
And he caught flack. And, and unfortunately, as Black men, that's just kind of the position. We're damned if we do, damned if we don't, right? Right. Because he could have went, and this is how the regard I hold him in. Look, this is a brother who understood YouTube early on. He started as a young teen doing what he was doing. And you just look at his maturation throughout the years. Dude, I was literally following him since like 2011. Okay, look at what he's grown into and what he's done. Okay, and even with all of that, Mike, he did have to go against the status quo. I'm sorry, and as Black men, I'm just saying, unfortunately we have to face that shit. That's like an unfortunate consequence, I guess, of being a Black man, right? And I'm saying even Marcus had to deal with it, but he said, "Fuck it." And he did it any goddamn way, and caught the flack, but moved on. And and that's really what I took away from it. And and shit, I oftentimes, man, ain't too many brothers out here that are speaking on the micromobility thing, right? To the extent that we speak to it, we're engaged in stuff like that. I'm trying to be up at the next micromobility conference in Frisco, February of next year, to speak over there. And the thought of it does kind of scare me, because now you're like, okay, well, if you're at a conference speaking on something, you're a leader in that field, okay? And then you're also that as a Black man, right? And just because you're at a conference or you're speaking or you're doing something, you have that kind of reach and all that, like that doesn't take you away from the very real realities of being Black and being a man. You know what I'm saying? So that's just an unfortunate thing. We have to just eat. We do. And we can,
but eat to what extent?
Well, no, that's what I was going to say. Now, to what extent, what we can do here is to do the social awareness piece, right? Which is what you largely speak to, Mike. I'm just saying though, when I brought Marcus and you brought that up, I'm like, I'm glad you did, because you know what? At the end of the day, he did it in spite of any goddamn way, and that's what we all have to do. Now, if we can also then focus on the social awareness side of things to like kind of bring things to an even kill, because like you just said, dude, you know, other guys that are in the tech space that are innovating and doing things, they don't catch this kind of shit, right? They don't have articles published like the one that Shonda posted, right? Speaking to the challenges type. This shit is like unique to us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I got it,
No,
man.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. I think the major issue with Marquise Brownlee is that he's an exception and not the rule. And in his attempt to increase his social capital, he has to move away from blackness while he's actually the prototypical black male.
Thank you.
You know, in melanation, right?
Thank you.
He has all of the features and hallmarks of a black male in tech, but he also is devoid of the real black experience that, like the article we're talking about here is highlighting, the other minority that doesn't get the support. He has an engine behind him, but how do we scale that engine so that every black neighborhood in America can have the same momentum that Marquise Brownlee has? I think that he's not 100% a tech person, to be quite frank. He knows tech stuff, but he's a
commentator. He's a commentator.
Yeah, he's a commentator, and I'm saying that. I know, like Richard Dixon, right? Richard Victor Dixon in the chat is somebody who I think would be a better face to the community than Marquise Brownlee. Now, that's not taking anything away from Marquise Brownlee. I'm just saying where Richard came from, he's more relatable than Marquise Brownlee would be, because Marquise Brownlee's kind of been he's kind of been chauffeured his whole life. He hasn't really had to go through the wire like most black men his age have, and I think that plays a significant role as to how he can relate to folks on the ground. But that's not taking anything away from his credibility and his creditation in social media. I just don't think he'll be able to relate to a lot of folks on the ground in the same capacity as somebody like a Richard Victor Dixon or a Citizen Lou or some of these other cats in here, maybe like a Keep It Techie like Josh or something like that. I think there needs to be more community service in that area, right? Where black men take, 10% of their time in a year, one weekend out of the year, kind of like the Peace Corps, and go out and go do their due diligence of community service, engaging the community at that level when they reach that level. But those are just my thoughts.
No, and
anybody else can jump in.
No, that's very pertinent, man. I'm kind of looking at him as more of like an early adopter example. He was a kid when he did it, right? And so, and what we're looking at, and that's where I was just kind of like looking at his maturation, and not to take anything away from what you just said, right? But we're looking at, one of the preeminent tech commentators, like in social media, right? Was a young black boy largely when he started doing this, right? So that's the one thing, and if anything else, what we don't want to lose is the image of that, because we've shown that what an interest in technology can lead to. And he's a prime example of it, right? I mean, yeah, we can get into his upbringing, his background, all that stuff, right? But I'm just saying, at the time when this was all in its infancy in terms of like tech reviews and all that kind of stuff. And he was just innocently doing it, man. And we look what happened here. And what that was his parents, dude, just supporting his interests. That's really what this boils down to, right? That was him as a young kid. He was supported in his interest, and then look what it matriculated into. And I'm saying that doesn't necessarily mean we can just create a bunch of Marcus Brownlees. No, I'm just saying that he's an example that we can all point to, like literally within this whole social media pantheon, specifically related to technology, and then even more so Black men. And then there's other ones too I
Mhm.
can point to that are out here. Jeremy Fielding, he's another one. For those of y'all who don't know, check him out. He's runs an engineering channel. Jeremy Fielding. He's like another Marcus Brownlee, basically. I think he's got like 2 million subs, or I don't know, he's got a ton of subs. But he does essentially what Marcus does, but he's more hands-on. He literally does the work, puts the camera on it, right? And he has that kind of impact. So I'm saying there's these examples out here, but that article that Shonda dropped more or less speaks to why there isn't more of an impact from people like them. There are examples. It's like, what's the cultural issue that impedes us, right, from pursuing this? What is that?
Hey, what's up, fellas? How y'all doing?
Hey, what's going on, Josh?
What's going on, Josh, man?
Right. Hanging in there, man, hanging in there. So I just wanted to, I don't know, kind of add to it, but it's like,
Pateki,
what's up, Nagon? How you doing? Yeah, it's like one thing, in my opinion, that is like very hard to get around. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to, speaking of Marquise Brownlee, I mean, he went straight into the, I guess you would call it the overall space, so to speak, or let me just say that the palm colored, space, so to speak. And it's, I don't know, it seems like it's, unless that's accepted, or if that's shown, our people don't support it. It seems like it. And so I guess, I don't know if I'm making sense, but I mean, to me, it seems like that, I don't know, our people don't support it until it's at a certain level, or until it's cool to actually support it. That's what I've seen. You know what I'm saying? And I hope that's relating to what you guys are saying, but that's based on what I think y'all talking about. Based on what I heard.
It actually is. I think the thing that we were saying, though, and what Mike brought up, was the Nipsey Hussle example, right? So to speak to the point you just made, the cool factor.
Yeah, exactly.
The cool factor, right? You see, so what it is it can't be Mike. Who was the brother that you brought up? Who was that brother?
Corey.
The brother that runs the brother, him, right? See, so I guess he ain't
Corey
cool
Thomas.
enough.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess he's not cool enough, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Nobody probably knows about this guy at all.
Bingo.
Outside of, us talking about it on the panel, or, a few people here and there, but it's like, I don't know. And that goes back to what y'all was talking about earlier. And that was something I really wanted to hop in on. I was rushing from the store to try to hurry up and get back to talk. But yeah, man, I don't know. It's very hard to market this, you know what I'm saying? Because there isn't that cool factor that people, I don't know, or our people tend to, look for or whatever. And maybe that's a marketing issue. I don't know.
No, just chiming in. I think Mike brought it up, is what's kind of dovetailing that. At least Black Panther at least got people thinking technology, right? That's got people leaning towards it. But like you said, there's not like one superstar right now that's kind of like leading tech from that person. Because if I think, who is the Black superstar in tech? I know LeBron's hooping. I know we got some football players, but I'm in the tech game. I can't really name. I can name 3 tech superstars, but I don't think if anybody knows them.
Well, the brother that Mike just had up, I would put people like him in that pantheon, right? As a tech dude. But yeah, that's just me being a tech guy, right?
Yeah, I guess my thing is, I'm sad to say this is, I work with Rapid 7. I didn't know it was ran by a Black CEO. Mike teaching me something, and I'm old as hell, and I didn't know it.
That's what I'm saying. I would put brothers like him in that category, but hey, that's just me.
I think that Joseph C. Phillips wrote this book, probably over 15 years ago. He Talked Like a White Boy. Okay. He highlights this issue of the cool factor for Black men, trying to walk this fine line when it comes to upward mobility, the cool factor. Everybody wants to be, the next Fabulous or the next, rapper or whatever, but they also want to have this exceedingly high level of education. And I think that you don't see this with white people, right? You don't really see like, Machine Gun Kelly or somebody like that having to shove, or be the representation of tech in order to get more white boys into Silicon Valley. You don't see that, right? You don't see Eminem being the face of Python classes on Free Code Camp, to get more white boys into tech. Now, some people will say, we live in a matriarchy, the gynarchy, the Bilderberg. I think some of that plays a role of female-run households, but I don't think that's the ultimate thing, because how are other oppressed groups handling this? When you talk about Palestinians, they're just as oppressed, in their country, in their states as Black Americans are. But they don't have this sort of issue. Most Palestinians I know have PhDs, despite their horrific background that they came from. And so why do Black Americans have this significant issue of trying to? Because you don't have to, like, Black women don't have to use Meg Thee Stallion to get more Black girls into tech.
Facts.
If you really think about it, they don't have to do that.
No, fact.
Right? Michelle Obama could show up, or Kamala Harris can show up, and that's more than enough. But they don't have to have the extremities of Black masculinity as an avatar to be the representation. And I think that the idea of pairing up avatars, in place of actual men of substance, I think that plays a degradation role, or plays a role of degradation to the community as a whole.
I just want to say, it negates your true intelligentsia. That's what it does.
I just want to say, Complex, just like, you can see it right here, just literally in the sector of Black YouTube, or right here alone. I mean, you see it here where, tech and Black educated folks, and I mean, you had the educated lames and all this kind of debate going on a couple of years ago. Educated lames. You're educated, you're lame. I mean, just think about that. To me, that's an oxymoron. But that's what, is actually, that's what's big. I'm sorry, excuse me, I just got kind of, that's what's actually getting pushed. I mean, people are pushing things outside of what tech is, of where we really should be putting a lot of our emphasis. You look at other communities; they put a lot of emphasis on technology, people being educated, and moving forward. We're moved away from that, and that's something that we have to push ourselves a lot more. We could see it here. We could see it here. We could see it here in our own sphere. Look at what goes on, and look how the educated or the tech, that kind of stuff, how these what people have to say about that. Mostly, just look at it. I mean, it's sitting right in front of us.
I agree with Negron with this, because the education part. We disparage education. We say education is not. We say going to school is not important. Recently, I went to register for a YC Combinator to try to get an idea in there. The questions they asked was, who was the individual who developed this? Does he have an education? So an education is important. Not only that, when I started doing my research on unicorns, on tech unicorns, did you know all that saying that, hey, Mark Zuckerberg and all that, those individuals are in the minority. Big unicorns, or most unicorns, are started with individuals with bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD in STEM. And they, even with YC, so that correlates to, if you want funding, they ask the question, did you have an education? Are you trustworthy enough for we to invest in that money for that? It's important. And people, again, do the research on unicorns. 70 to 80% of unicorns are founded by individuals with bachelor's to PhDs. Venture capitals utilize that, because when I started looking at YC Combinator, just go look at their application. They will ask you, who is your founder? What background does he have? Yeah, you might say, okay, but you're more trustworthy if you have an educational background in the STEM. Okay, we know he's a founder. He has gone through total knowledge of this technical aspect. We can trust him. We can trust him in one. That's just one portion. But the other portion, but that portion is there. But when I come on these YouTube streets, it's education is not that important. You just go in, you can work it out. You don't need that education. And I'm telling you now, as it gets harder, education is important. It's needed, especially within STEM, especially individuals who want to found their companies, especially individuals who want to found unicorns. Education is important, especially within STEM. And that's it.
Hey, what's going on, Patrick? How you doing, man? It's been a minute, man. How you doing?
Okay, it's been a minute. I'm again doing a lot of the YC combination, trying to do. But when I see all this,
I had a question about that. Okay, so Y Combinator?
Yeah,
you were looking. You said you were looking at the application for all that.
I was doing that. Because again, the application I was already ready to submit. I had to do my whole pitch. I had to go to do the YouTube pitch, create my own pitch card, do all that, trying to submit my buildup of a healthcare system. So with algorithms, I was trying to pitch it. So right now I'm doing all that to submit it. And what I'm seeing in the application, it's not something, hey, again, even when I started talking to people who did it, they said education is important. They say you need somebody, maybe if you have a partner and all that. They ask that next question: who is the technical founder? Who is the brains? Who is that? Who is that? They do ask that question just to invest money in.
This is why I wanted to ask these questions, because that's interesting that you're in that process of applying to Y Combinator, right? And then you also brought up the part that a lot of the angel investors, VCs that are part of that have what? Right, they have high degrees, right? Masters,
bachelor's, masters. If you look at it, I even put the article in there. You can see the distribution.
Right. So that's why I'm asking you these questions, so that people can understand, like this whole soup to nuts aspect of how this all sort of intrinsically ties together with guys like us, people that are in tech, entrepreneurs. We have tech companies and stuff like that. Where do you think guys that have companies like ours go to get funding? They go to places like Y Combinator.
Yeah, they go to Y Combinator. They go different places, and they ask these questions. And then they'll be, who are your founder? Who's your technical founder? I am. What is your background? Can we see your resume? What did you do? And when they say, okay, we have confidence. This dude has been doing machine learning, algorithms, healthcare for the 10 years. We have confidence that this might work. See, it's building that confidence.
I'm not sure if that's necessarily the venue that we need to be going down, right? If that's going to be the case, because we know that
But what do we have?
No, I'm saying
it's what we have. We have to
let me just finish up. No, let me just finish. I think because Black founders only get 1% of VC investment compared to their white counterparts, right? And so I think we have to rethink and reinvent what venture capitalism is for Black people on the continent in America. We have to create our own Pan-African venture capital investment platforms.
I agree with you.
Is that we're not going through a litany of questions from a bunch of white men who basically dominate this space and decide whether or not you get the investment versus somebody like Elizabeth Holmes who ran Theranos, vaporware company, right? Who got billions of dollars in investment, and we don't know where the money is, right? And so she got more investment than all Black founders combined as a white woman. And so I think that, and that's some of the stuff that we've been talking about, like city, state, federal government, municipalities, and other stakeholders have to be involved in this in order for this to really work, right? If Black people only getting 1%, then how do we go from 1 to 20 in the $500-700 billion market cap? Yeah, VC market cap is $700 billion, and so how do we create our own venue so that we're not trapped in these sort of in these sort of areas. But see, you try to have these conversations in the manosphere, and people, you know, they're really out to lunch. They don't really understand the significance of billions and billions of dollars are missing, you know, from Black people's hands, because they can't get access to it because you got these muckety mucks, you know, keeping us from it. So,
but Mike, how many people are talking about YC Combinator in the Black manosphere right now? Anybody talking about VC funding? How many people are really engaging and saying, "Hey, you can use this avenue, raise some money for your idea"? I mean, people would just a sheet, a white paper are getting millions of white boys with white paper ideas are getting millions of dollars of funding just on white paper, on a white paper idea, not even a fully formed.
Yep.
So now the question is
Airbnb.
Well, how many people are talking about this in the manosphere right now? Because I had to do a lot of research out of this just to figure out how to do YC Combinator, to different, how to pitch, but how many people are talking about that? How many people, rather than talking about this? So,
yeah,
these are the questions. Anybody, if you're interested in tech, how I have a white paper idea. I think it's going to work. I have the background to back me up. How can I get this money to get my idea funded? How many people can you reach out to say, "Oh, these guys are talking about these ideas. These guys are teaching us about YC Combinator. I can go talk to this guy network." How many people? We don't have that in this right now. We don't. What we have is what we have. And what we have is, and the world is changing every day.
Think about Floyd. Think about Floyd Mayweather, how much money he burns on material items, and how much of an impact he could be having as a venture capitalist himself, right? Think about how many cars, you know, DJ Khaled or any, you know, Rick Ross or any of these other guys, you know, they got so many cars, man. I remember Antoine Walker, used to be a former basketball player. He had 25 cars. You're only one person. What do you need all these cars for? Like, you don't need all of these.
No, I'm sorry, dude. That was just
he went broke though. I'm saying this. I'm saying he went broke trying to keep up that lifestyle, and I'm saying he would have been better off investing that money back into the people, but he didn't do that. He just kind of spent it and burnt it all up. And so there's a lot of nuance here that needs to be analyzed.
Let's talk about the music side.
I got a question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go, Josh. No, go, Josh.
No, I just wanted to hop in there because you guys are going back to the celebrity thing, and I want to really kind of ask a question to everybody on the panel, Mike included. So do you think is more of because we don't have, the reason they use these celebrities and all this is because we really don't have much of a representation in the tech industry in general? Because I mean, if you look at the numbers, and like I've been looking through Pew Research and all that stuff, just looking at the diversity numbers, and we pretty much are dropping the bucket. And so it's almost as if they have to, or they look at it like they have to use these celebrities, because if you look at the numbers, just solely the numbers, it's a drop in the bucket. It ain't really much to pull from, you know, to put out there.
The celebrities are there for marketing purposes. See, the problem what we're looking at here is the people who are actually, you know what it's like? It's like having a rapper speak politics. As opposed,
but you would never see that with another group, though.
Oh, but I'm not advocating for that. I know
you're not.
I
know you're not. But I'm saying, like, this is, I'm trying to kind of explain what it is that Black folks seemingly are most relatable to the people that entertain them, right? With Black folks, the Black community does not do, particularly here in the United States. It doesn't separate. Like, there's times when I want to be entertained. And that's a general thing. That could be music consumption. Maybe I'm listening to some old stand-up comedy or some shit while I'm working. Well, whatever, right? Entertainment, right? And then there's the things when I throw on my Bloomberg and I just hit play on my news feed and it just rolls down the list of all the updated news, right? I want to be informed. right? And what we do is we separate those things. And then what we also do is we have people that we appropriate, right? The people that entertain us, the people that inform us, right? And hopefully in both venues, those are people of high intelligence. But what we're doing is we're separating the shit. I'm not going to look to my goddamn entertainer to inform me.
Right.
I'm going to look to the people that have the knowledge. And that's the problem with Black folks. It's like we don't value people who have the actual knowledge. We would prefer to have the rapper say,
Right.
yo, I'm doing this crypto shit. You know what I mean?
And
You
the
know what
funny,
I'm saying?
But see, the point I'm trying to get at is, should we be tackling more of building up our numbers within the tech industry or the STEM fields in general?
but we can't.
And I'm not telling y'all to change anything. I'm just
No,
throwing it out there as
no.
an idea. Like,
But we
should
can't.
that
Look at. Do you remember the problem we've having recently, where Jay-Z came out? They're saying an AI created a record from his voice.
Yeah.
But do you know nobody's talking about the solution and how to stop that? I know the solution, but has anybody told you the solution? The solution is there.
Don't you say it. Don't you
It's
say
signal
it.
processing. Their
Okay.
voices are signals. They're like fingerprints. You can put a proprietary on your signal and say, hey, this is my signal. Anytime anybody uses that signal, I match it to my signal. If it matches my signal,
And I didn't
pay me.
authorize it.
You pay me. It's signal processing.
Okay.
Quantify your voice. They are doing it. Nobody's told the solution.
So wait, are these these things that are coming out right now, because they just did it with Drake?
It's a signal.
They just did it with okay. Are these use cases for what you're saying right now?
For Star Wars too.
Yeah,
James Earl Jones
it's
did it for
signal
Star Wars.
processing. You take your signal and quantify it and say, this is a signal. Anytime someone uses my voice, I'm going to take you to court. And if my signal matches my signal and it's 90%, 80% matches, you don't own it. I will sue you. Simple. It's signal processing. That's what they're doing. Quantifying
I think
your
YouTube
voice.
does something similar.
That's
Isn't
it.
that how they pop people for copyright?
Yeah, but there's no laws right now.
Content ID.
Yeah, but
Content,
right now,
okay.
but right now, if you go to court and say, look, I'm Jay-Z. This is my signal. I own this. This is my fingerprint. This is my voice. I own it. Nobody can use it. File a patent or find it. This is my voice. This is my signal. Anybody that comes out again and utilizes it, he's gonna have, when I match it to my signal and it states that's 80% matches my signal, I can sue you. And that is signal processing. That's what ML and machine learning and all that. That's signal processing. That's what but nobody's telling the solution. Everybody's telling you the problem. But the solution is right there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the problem. We look at, Jay-Z's been stolen, but nobody's saying, okay, how do we solve it? How do we make that problem go away?
But
Who
Patrick,
can own that?
my question is that, do you think that what they were doing with those, leaking the audios, right, use case, I'm thinking this was a use case thing, right? If we had the AI do the thing, how many people could we fool? A lot of people were like, oh my God, I thought that was Drake. Oh my God, I thought that was Jay-Z. And now the counterance to that, because a lot of people did, you would be absolutely right. It would be smart to go ahead, because AI can go ahead and just clone your voice, essentially, make songs that you never wrote, that you're not getting any kind of you're not getting any sort of writing, publishing, or anything like that from, right? And totally clone your shit and just make a hit out here, unbeknownst to you, right? You see, so that's right there.
Yeah, but you take them to court and say, this is my song because it's my fingerprint. It matches my signal, which I've processed, and you can sue them. This is it.
Yeah, that's yeah.
But you can use chat GPT to actually extrapolate that across all areas of digital.
I mean, this is what it is. What we are so focused on, it's Jay-Z, but nobody's saying who's gonna do this signal processing.
I have a question.
Sure.
Don't you think that might open up a whole can of worms in the hip hop industry?
Well, it's already open.
It's already open.
Now let me finish my question. I'm saying, don't you think that it would open up a whole can of worms from the hip hop industry, who very Bloodline back in the day was sampling other people's stuff and not getting credit for it.
No. There's a difference between sampling a recorded work and an AI literally cloning your voice. There's a difference.
Right. I know the difference. I'm saying you're still going to court on both ends.
But if you sample it, but if it doesn't match what you already have, his voice, it's not. It's just again, it's not. You can't hold that in court.
It's a difference.
It has to match a signal.
Sampling, we're talking about a copyrighted work.
Yeah.
Sampling, we're talking about a work that's already been published and copyrighted.
But
in this scenario, that we're talking about engineering cannabis and myself, how we sound right now.
Right.
Okay. But there's some AI engine cloning our voice and then saying a shit that we as real people didn't. So then what engineering cannabis is saying, we need to have some sort of mechanism, i.e. the rappers who can go after people who use an AI application to clone their voice to make songs.
And that's a business idea.
Mm-hmm.
A lawyer can come in and say, look, give me all your voices. I'm going to help you build a pattern on all your voices.
No, you should not be saying
Get all that shit. Then each time you come in, we're going to match it. Is it 90%? Yeah, sue them. Is it 80%? Sue them. But this is it. But
that's what smart contracts.
This is what blockchain is. Blockchain. This is where you can store on the blockchain.
That's where smart contracts come in, right?
Yeah.
So that's an actual plausible case, but I don't think you're going to find that on these other channels in the manosphere. Despite
I'm giving you technology,
despite the struggle titles that they have. But I'm just saying, to your point, engineering cannabis, I think when it comes to venture capital investment in these areas, there is definitely a access to capital issue, right? Whether it's getting a loan from a bank or going to a VC, we're just missing in these areas. I think we covered an article back in January where a Black woman was trying to get some investment for her startup, and she said she couldn't even get $25,000 to start her business, to start her startup. And these sort of issues plague representation, right? Because if the whole idea of DEI is to have more representation of Black folks and Black faces in white spaces, well, that doesn't help that you're kind of stymieing the progress of folks by not giving them, like you said, you go to a Y Combinator and you go through a litany of questions, a battery of questions before they even decide that they're going to invest in you.
Right.
Meanwhile, you get somebody like, Airbnb, whose business model completely collapsed during the pandemic when everybody had to do remote work. It served no purpose. But what they did is they parlayed the real estate that they acquired through Airbnb and they flipped it, right? And so their business model was shaky from the beginning, and any VC, any venture capitalist should have been able to spot that from a mile away. That what happens if the economy shuts down? Your whole entire business model. Yeah, your whole entire business model goes out the window. So how is it possible that these shaky businesses, Facebook did not turn revenue between 2006 and 2016.
I'm about to say,
for 10 years, they turned no revenue.
How did you continuously get funded? How?
Yeah.
They are good marketing.
There's a lot of feedback coming from somebody. Yeah. The marketing is one thing, but the whiteness is another, right? And that's the main factor, right? White VCs are more comfortable with white startups, founders. And so when Black founders try to find their way into these areas, no matter how legit their business pitches,
they scrutinize the shit out of you.
They or not just say scrutinize, they strike out a lot. And it's nothing wrong. It's not that they're doing anything wrong, but they actually are, being discriminated against in these areas. And so the lack of representation in STEM is also facilitated, by the lack of investment from some.
Did I just hear that Facebook didn't make no money until what year again?
It was
between 2006 and 2016.
10 years. 10 years. Span of 10
God
years.
damn, they've been getting free money since 2004.
Okay, well, whatever it was 10 plus years, right? But until they turn some kind of profit.
But you see, if it was a black,
Mhm.
it was gift fund. They would not fund that for over a decade. Matter of fact, you lucky even get a loan.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to make sure we give Ra L the last 3 minutes. You have the floor, man. We can close out.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yo, yeah, piece of the panel, piece of the chat. As far as the piece, as far as getting Black men interested in Black boys and Black men interested in STEM, I think that one of the most critical components that I think that most Black people just really don't understand is the nonprofit sector and actually how it works. Business people have a keen interest in engaging in the nonprofit sector because it's how a lot of them are able to use the nonprofit sector in a way strategically to lower their tax burdens to the government, which allow them to keep more money to expand as well. So this is, I think, somewhere where a lot of Black men need to really get much more knowledgeable about, because I see a lot of these dudes in these spaces who think, they're going to use some white chick in Britain to advance their interests, when a lot of times they're really not knowledgeable about how the system works. I purchased this grant database not too long ago, and because we were hearing a lot in the space about Black boys and stuff like that, I just typed it into the search engine, and a whole litany of grant opportunities concerning Black boys. I mean, I've seen even discussions on how to engage, Black boys in trying to get them interested in the field. And I think that when you have people who are out here claiming that they're speaking on the interests of Black boys and Black men, when they really don't even have any idea how to actually interface within the system properly. I mean, we were on a panel with a dude that was in his 60s, man, who who told us, man, contract is theoretical. And it actually blew my mind to hear somebody say that, when when most of the stuff that we do is contract based in the society. So I think that when it comes to issues like funding, we really are really short sighted, man, from the nonprofit sector, especially the private sector, because the good thing about the private sector is when you start looking for grant opportunities in the private sector, you're not dealing with the government, who have a much more a greater responsibility on allocation of tax dollars, which is why there are so many rules and stipulations attached to government grants, as opposed to the private sector. You get a little bit much more freedom to come up with ideas that are kind of outside of the box, and because these people are actually business people, they can actually much more relate to thinking outside of the box, because that's what they do as far as being entrepreneurs. So I just think that you have grant sites where you can learn the beginnings of how to engage on a nonprofit level, in terms of like actually education, teaching you how to write grant proposals, teaching you which funding sources to seek to give you a best chance of actually matching you with the critical sources, so you actually are utilizing your time in a much more wise fashion, so you can get to the money faster. And so I think a lot of times, like when Black people complaining about the system, they really don't know how to really truly interface within the system. Your board, for example, is going to be, especially when you start applying for grants, your nonprofit board, who you put on your board is going to be absolutely critical in seeking grants, because people are not going to want to give a person money who put their mama, sister, cousin on the board, people who are not actually, I think one of the brothers was talking about this earlier, who are not going to want to put the money in hands of people who they do not believe are going to be good stewards of the money, because they don't just want to give you money to start something. They want to see something be ultimately sustainable over a course of time. And so that means they want to make sure that they're giving money to people because a lot of this much more policing over grant money came actually because of what the Red Cross was doing years ago, especially after 9/11, stuff like that. And people were seeing that the money that they were giving was not really being allocated properly. So there's much more of a look on the dollar that these entities give. So I think people just need to get much more knowledgeable about that.
Hey, Mike.
All right, look, we got one last. Yeah.
Hey, there was a question in the chat. I just wanted to read it for you guys to answer. I can give my chime in too, but on a spot live, I think that's how you say that. The question for the panel: do you think white VCs also request/require more of Black founders' companies? And then she said, as far as the equity split for investing. Yeah, I can give my.
Yeah, that is the case.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, that is the case. We've covered this before, but that is the case. That and that's why you're starting to see a lot more Black VCs like Harlem Capital. I know there's a Black Wall Street VC firm out there in Oklahoma City. I know they're doing some great stuff out there. So you're starting to see it now. You wasn't seeing that 10 years ago. 15 years ago. You're starting to see it now after George Floyd, because I think Jason Calacunis on YouTube, I think he was one of the most prominent voices, as he's an angel investor, and he's really calling a lot of folks out in the VC sector for their lack of investment into Black startups and whatnot. And so he has a channel called Startup Grind, I think it is, or Startup Nation, I think it is. I think the name of the channel right now, but he's been very vocal about the lack of representation of Black startup founders getting venture capital funding. And he's a white guy. He's been calling out white guys in the industry, saying that it's predominantly white male, and that's why we don't have, we have issues like George Floyd, because we don't have a whole lot of investment going into Black communities in the capacity that we can have it. And so it's not that the money's not there. It's not that Black people are doing anything wrong. It's just that there is a there is a fraternity movement within Silicon Valley that denies access to, Black startup founders. And unfortunately, you can't run a startup in the same capacity as a nonprofit. It's just not the same. It's a very different animal because, you're kind of running on shoestring budgets in order to make something work. And you have to provide a lot more data in order to keep getting funding. But if that was really the case, Sam Bankman-Fried, from FTX, with all the funny business that went on at FTX, he wouldn't have been able to get funding either. But, he got a whole lot of funding, and nobody ever questioned the legitimacy of his business. Neither have we seen that with, Facebook and some of these other platforms that's out here that start up. Thorano. So there's quite a few of them. Even some of your AI startups and stuff like that, like Darktrace, they haven't turned any profit, and they got a whole lot of investment. And so these are the sort of things that we run into that's very unique to Black people, and that's why we have to come up with a new ecosystem going forward. We just cannot keep repeating the same practices that has impacted us the last 20 or 30 years. That doesn't work anymore. We have to start aligning ourselves with big government, because big government is some of the biggest investors, like the Small Business Association, SBA. They have something called SEED, SEED, which is their angel investment arm. And Black people get most of their angel investment from the SBA, 25, 50, 100,000 $250,000. And that's so, these are some of the avenues that we can leverage in order to stop, the discrimination at the VC level. But I need to close out now.
I want to say
thank you all for joining us. And
some short.
No, I have to go. Conflict. I have to go. Chaos. Sorry. Yeah, hit the like button on the way out and shit.